Today we're talking about Palo Alto. I have a couple people with me. I have Mia over here, first time on the channel. How are you, Mia? How's life?
I'm good. I'm excited
Cool.
for this.
And it's Mia's first time here, and I believe it's this other person's 50th time with me.
Hi.
Justin, introduce yourself if you feel like
Uh,
you.
Style of substance. I have the better channel here. Check me out.
It's probably not entirely untrue, but they were talking about Palo Alto. We played a little game of like cinephile telephone. Like Mia told me to watch this movie because she really liked it, and then I thought it was amazing. So then I tell Justin to watch this movie, and now this is where we ended up. Hopefully, we can have a pretty decent discussion about this film directed by Gia Coppola. Um, it's hard to like structure a conversation like this. Like at first, just do because I think the best way to do it is to like do the three main characters, do April, then Teddy, then Fred, because we all want to peak with Fred because Fred is the best. I think we can all agree that Fred is the coolest.
Yes.
Yes.
No one has
Yeah,
to
it's
say anything. No one has
absolutely.
to engage.
Well,
Just be me.
do you
And
want to
then
get the elephant in the room out of the way first, though?
what is that?
James Franco.
Okay. We're doing James
Okay.
Franco. Why would
Yeah,
that be an elephant in the room? Enlighten us, please. You have the
okay.
floor.
So I was looking into this. Basically, James Franco, who wrote the collection of short stories that this film was adapted from, and he also plays in this as the coach. Um, so I think Zach was telling me that basically he thought maybe this film might be a little problematic in the sense that well, Franco plays like a coach that's wanting to like seduce his student, and he successfully does so. And James Franco has had a record of not necessarily being the best director and teacher, and kind of exploiting his positions of power. Um, so I thought we should probably mention that first, and that sort of maybe kind of influences the way maybe we should sort of engage with the text. But at any rate, either way, like I think that it demonstrates talent, not just James Franco as a writer, but also as an actor. But I would still think it would be a little irresponsible not to at least bring that up first, you know. Um, at any rate, I think that like this, take it for what it is. Basically, this film is sort of somewhat loosely and somewhat less loosely based off of James Franco's life and kind of like his peripheral vision of the different people that were in his school and in his town and in his city of Palo Alto. Um, and so it's a very personal text in that sense. What exactly his motivation was for playing the coach, I'm not entirely sure, but at any rate, I would say that in spite of that, it's quite a fascinating like case study, like with that and without that.
Mhm. Mia, did you read the book, the stories or whatever?
Yeah, I did a few years ago. I don't really remember it much, but I don't think it's exactly like the movie. Yeah, it's just like
Yeah,
vaguely like that.
well, I believe like Gia Coppola took like some kind of like creative liberties with like kind of like changing it because if I'm not mistaken, it's like a collection of short stories, right? And it's like, but then
Yeah.
she kind of like merged them together, of course, with Franco's like seal of approval too, because it's like
If,
uh,
if there's one thing like the movie feels extremely sensitive and extremely sincere and
mhm,
also like very, very personal, probably not just
mhm.
for Franco, but for like Gia.
Yeah,
Uh, Mia sent me this thing. I think I also forwarded to you like the making of
yeah,
Palo
I
Alto.
watched most of that last night actually. It was
Yeah. And like watching it was like pretty eye-opening. I see a lot more of Gia now that I know Gia's personality in the film than I do of what I know of Franco. So one cool thing I'll say about Franco, and I will like make comments on the problematic
yeah,
aspect because we're like it feeds directly into the April character that we're going into
yeah.
right now. I'll speak more on that in like I don't know a minute and 30 seconds. You guys can like hold on. Um, but at least James Franco did say like they were trying to get funding for the movie and he couldn't find any. They couldn't find any money for it. So he said, just find me a movie that'll pay me $1 million and then I'll give all that to Palo Alto. And I'm almost positive it has to be that Rise of the Planet of the Apes
Rise of
movie.
the
I was
Planet
looking at
Apes,
his
yeah.
filmography and I'm like, that one of these things isn't like the other.
Yeah, and it's important to note that he didn't come back for the sequel.
Yeah.
They just used like archive footage of him, so like I don't know. Seems
Makes
like
perfect sense. But I was watching it, and Gia Coppola's personality, I really like her personality a lot, and she's an extremely like kind filmmaker on set from what the documentary focused on. And it's like, I think it was made by her mom, who also, that's what I'm getting into. Like April is such an analog for Gia Coppola in a lot of like kind of subtle and a lot of very deliberately direct ways. Like her own mother plays April's mother, and wanted to point out like the clothes that they have like April wearing. Like I swear to God that Gia Coppola is like a striped black shirt, remarkably similar to the one I have on. And April wears that in the movie, and Gia's wearing it like almost most of the production of filming, making the movie. Now this is a very personal film. I would say. What do you guys have to say about that?
I think I completely agree, and I think we'll get more into that as we talk about each of the characters. But I would also like to kind of echo your sentiment about like her seeming like a kind filmmaker. I think she's also just very sweet and timid in the way that she talks. Like, oh, I like that. This is what I was doing with these different actors. It's like, oh, okay.
That's like director goals right there. It's like you and I, we cover like a lot of these art house filmmakers who have like a reputation for being like autocratic or terrible on their sets. And it's like, no, you can actually make a really good movie by being really supportive. Like Jack Kilmer was like, the way I was asked to be on this movie was like whether or not she wanted to collab with me. I'm like, that's how you should do it. That's so nice. Oh, geez.
Yeah. What do you think, Mia?
I actually watched this other YouTube video, James Franco talking about how he met Gia, and he was like in this deli in New York City once, just getting lunch, and he saw this group of like cool kids walk in, and he was like, "Oh, I want to like know who they are and like hang out with them." And then later on, he went to like, I don't know if he went to like a movie or a museum or something, but he ran into Gia and he was like, "Hey, you were one of those cool kids at the deli." And then they just started talking about like music and film.
I just want to be a cool kid at a deli. That's what I want to be in life. I want to be cool enough so that like a James Franco could, I think that's a life goal. I think we could all agree on that. We're about to jump into April, but just for fun, like what year did this movie come out? Like 2013-ish?
2013, I think.
Yeah.
2013. The kind of movie that it is, a teen movie, right? I don't know where I'm trying to go right now.
I would say it's
what did it remind you of? What did it remind you of?
It's a movie about teens. I wouldn't say it's like really necessarily for teens. It's more for adults.
I think it should be. I think in that E2 Mama way, it should be for teens. Like it should be the movie that teenagers are watching. I think, honestly.
The films that I would say it reminds me of, sort of, and a little more loosely, sort of like the films of like Larry Clark and Harmony Korine, but a bit more subtle, a bit more mature in some ways. Not to like throw shade at Corinne or Clark by any means, but it's a different sensibility that's brought to the table. Somewhat of more feminine sensibility, but then also I would say there's a little bit of like, it kind of reminded me of Gus Van Sant's films a little bit too, to some extent, in the way that it like depicts like the kids. Although I would say that like if you look at something like Elephant, like that's a bit more detached. This is a bit more intimate than that, I would say.
I'm thinking more like drugstore cowboy era.
Yeah.
I thought of like Paranoid Park.
Yes. That's the one that reminded me of. That's a great movie too. I completely agree with you on that one.
What would you say the attitude of this film is?
The overall attitude.
Yeah. You said it's not detached, but like, what is it? Is it just?
Like, well, I would still say it is detached to some extent, just like relative to something like, even some of Gus Van Sant's films. Maybe I would kind of probably compare it to Gus Van Sant, honestly. But I would say that like as far as it being like, as far as the attitude, I would say it's like sort of a mixture of angsty and like calm in a way. I don't know how to explain it. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
There are quite a few things in this film to think about and to really question after it's done. And one of the things I keep questioning is like, what is the virtue of Palo Alto? Like what does this film think is valuable? What does this film think is important? Like what does it place? What does it insist upon? And we'll figure that out by the end of this. Let's talk about April. Let's talk about Emma Roberts. Um, I thought Emma Roberts was amazing this movie. I do like Emma Roberts already, mostly because of like Scream 4, but I think she's awesome anyway. April's a really cool character. I think April's a heavy analog for Gia Coppola in a couple different ways. Okay, responsible for a scene I've been obsessing over low key, or maybe like high key, whatever, loudly. The scene where she's babysitting James Franco's kid, and and like they put on these like masks and then they watch like a fake nude scene or a recreation of a nude scene from Phoebe
Fast
Cates
Times.
in Fast
Yeah.
Times. Yeah, and they wear a mask while they're doing it, and like it's not like they don't say anything to each other about the masks or even like talk about that they're doing that. I've been like really fascinated with the way that like we interact with media, the way that you interact with film or with art. And I think Palo Alto is a film that's really just interested in interaction, just in general, how we interact with like everything and everyone around us. But like film is no different, and probably there's something about I'm sure that Fast Time scene was a lot of kids like first time seeing nudity like that. It probably has something to do uh, with a bit of a loss of innocence, a little bit, but not like in very intense sort of way. But the way you approach art or engage with art, you're somehow wearing a mask, or you're somehow trying to be. Will
It's
anyone
it's
else help me out with
it's
this?
like you're kind of filtering it, right? Like it's kind of
Yeah,
like your engagement with art and within media. It's filtered. I wasn't. I guess like in some ways it's almost like they put on like this mask in order to really make sense of the world and the art that they consume
yeah.
within it. But I would
And there's
also
that overt thing that like we wear masks. We're always wearing masks no matter what the social situation is. But I guess the one with art, the pageantry is probably more visible, possibly.
I think
Or
like another point within that scene, even beyond just the mask part, is I think it's almost like you could argue. I mean, she's like this like she's showing like this 8-year old or however old he is. I'm not good with kids' ages, but like this nude scene from a movie. Like, should she really be showing him that? He even says
well,
like, I
no,
don't
but
know if
that's really cool because it's like the trickle down effect of like
yes.
the parents are like are sexualizing these kids and they keep like moving on down. It's almost like a power play, keep moving down.
Yes, and
Um, but
and
even Emma Robert, even a 17-year-old's doing it to a 7-year-old or whatever.
yeah, like she's even introducing him to into like kind of like a hint at like this world of like sex, but then it's also like it's filtered through the mask, how they're watching it. It's almost just like this kind of like for play.
Yeah.
Um,
Like, and I was watching it and I was like live texting Mia I lost my mind at that scene. That scene was I was like, okay, this is gonna be really cool. Um, any Mia, what are your basic thoughts on like April as a character?
I really like her. She kind of like reminds me a lot of myself more of that age because I hung out with a lot of like skater kids and I was like one of the only girls like a lot of the time just hanging out. Um, so I really like related to her sort of, but the things that always stick out to me is that scene where she comes home and her mom's like asking her if she's tired or if she's depressed, and she's like, "No, I'm just tired." And she's like, "Oh, you should lay down. You look tired." And she's like, "Yeah, I already said that. Like, I'm gonna go lay down." And that whole thing reminded me of like interactions that I've had with my mom where I can like tell that she's not really like listening.
she's not listening, but she's also not entirely wrong. She's not entirely wrong either, though. But like it's kind of like this like kind of like depression that's like building up and eventually reaches kind of this boiling point. But like her mom like kind of clues in on what's going on, but at the same time she's not really like the kid needs distance, right? Like that's kind of part of growing up, right? That's kind of
Yeah,
how I
like
see
she's
it.
never available though. She's like always on the
Yeah.
phone. Isn't it a big deal when she like gets off the phone to like make her breakfast kind of?
Yeah, it
Like,
seems like it.
yeah. Um but this is a movie I think where you could find like doubles of yourself in it, at least in some of the actions of at least the three main characters for sure.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with that. And kind of like we're kind of not even necessarily like who we are, but how it's kind of how we think and process information and things that we kind of like some anger that's kind of like building within us, or and not just anger, but also lust and like frustration with it with the kind of like established orders. That's kind of how I see it.
Let me just ask a
Um,
question I think would be like fun. Oh no, we can talk about established orders if you'd like. I mean, I think that's what we've had this discussion before, about what makes teen movies inherently rebellious. Although we had the discussion in the context of postmodernism, like because that's when you start to really notice the social stratification around you.
right.
It must be a lot more intense in Palo Alto. Like the only things I know about Palo Alto as a city, uh, were taught to me by the Veronica Mars television show, and I know that they would never lie to me. They used like Palo Alto as a Veronica Mars takes place in Neptune, California, and I think they're just pretending they're in Palo Alto, this kind of like weird like city that incorporated itself. And they have like an ultra rich center and like surrounded. And Palo Alto had a terrible like crime problem like for at least a decade, because they incorporated the city and made an ultra rich center while the rest of it was basically like a ghetto, but still this ultra rich center, like the bougiest place on the planet or whatever. um so I guess my point is that I think the social stratification and the apathy that would come from realizing that would be even heavier in a place like Palo Alto. um which, did they even say Palo Alto in the movie?
I don't think
Uh,
so.
I don't think so either.
I,
but
I
um
yeah, I don't remember that.
but we have
But
talked about like teen movies are the best, and also I think that my major thing with teen movies is that when a teenage character does something extremely melodramatic or something that doesn't make sense, it's very authentic and it's still genuine, as opposed to if an adult did these same things. Like an adult Fred would be a complete fucking lunatic, a complete psychopath, but a
he
teenage
already is
Fred
a
would be.
psychopath. He already is a psychopath. Like,
But there's I think like an intrinsic like naivety to him being a psychopath in the film. Like we'll get to him in like 2 seconds. I was just using him as like
catalyst kind of
a
to
center for what I'm trying to
yeah.
say. It's just when a teenage character acts melodramatically and acts extremely sincerely, we don't see it as contrived. Like I think a teen film can have a lot of sincerity, and it feels
Right, because when kids
feels
act
genuine.
right, because when kids act up, it's kind of like as part of the growing process, right? And it's almost like you can
Exactly.
kind of believe it, like when like when Teddy like lashed out at the policeman, for example, like you can
Yep.
sort of buy it,
Oh
right?
God, that gave me really bad flashbacks, man. Of like being like, oh my God, dude. I've had bad interactions with police, and that just reminded me of being a little bit older than him, but still, oh my God, that was
But
exactly.
right, but it's not just Teddy. I think also just like for characters like April, like they are all
It's for all the characters,
they're
Emily,
all
like all of them.
they're all like responding to like kind of like in some ways I feel like it is sort of about like the lack of like proper parental guidance in some ways. We're like a lot of these parents are they're either just too disconnected from their children or they just aren't good parents. And that's kind of and I feel like that is sort of like this underlying theme of it. And this is how people respond if they don't have like the proper parental upbringing where they're taught like appropriately. And by the same token, you also see how like parents sort of and not just parents but also just parental figures like authority figures itself, right, like so in addition to the cops there's also like the people that you're supposed to look up to, whether those be teachers, whether those be like and in the case of James Franco he's the coach, but like he violates sort of the and even though she's probably like 17 or 18, like it's still it's like kind of like a mismatch of like power dynamics, right?
Yeah, but
um
while I agree with you, and like I wouldn't call like Palo Alto morally nihilistic. I do
Mhm.
think it believes that like the way
Well,
that things are is unchangeable. Like you can't change it.
I would
And it's
argue that
just
is nihilistic, Zach.
I wouldn't honestly. I would call it a lot more practical than nihilism is even. You can't change the way that something is, but you can try to feel alive within it, which is the opposite of nihilistic to me personally.
Yeah, I think it's pretty summed up when James Franco or Mr. B and April are talking, and she's like, I don't know why I do things, like, doesn't make sense to me. And he's like, oh, that's because you're a kid. And
Mhm.
it's pretty much like the whole movie. And
Well, but in some ways that seems like almost like condescending, and there may be some level of truth to it, but it's also sort of condescending, where it's like, oh well, you'll understand when you're older, right? Like when you're in the real world, you get it, you know. But at the same time, it's like, well, they are like, you know, approaching adulthood, they are growing up, and they're realizing that like kind of like their surroundings and the people within their lives are constantly fail them in a lot of ways, whether those be parents or whether those be teachers, so, or even their own friends, and that's kind of what I think like part of this is about. I think a lot of ways it is. I don't know if I'd go so far as to call it coming of age, but it's definitely captures like
I would.
yeah, maybe coming of age, yeah. Like it captures like a moment in people's life, like growing up, like kind of like towards like the, you know, the last 2 years of high school, that like that time period. Where
Absolutely.
you're told you're an adult, but you're also told you're a kid, and you kind of there's kind of like an incongruity there, in how people interact with you, and in some ways they will exploit that kind of sort of like that paradox in that sense, because it's like I read some people I was looking through some like reviews of the film, and some people were saying that James Franco and her are having a consensual relationship. Other people were saying that he raped her, and there's like and it's sort of interesting to see kind of like differing perspectives, like from a sociological point of view of like whether somebody is like an adult at this point or not. Um,
I think this film gives us a world where like the older you get, the more sincere you become, or insincere you become. I'm
yeah, I
sorry.
was.
Especially when like just for fun, like what makes because two characters I believe profess their love for April, and one of them, not only the audience believes is sincere, but April herself believes that Charlie is sincere when he says that he loves her.
Charlie, I
Yeah,
mean
so
Teddy.
what is Teddy, fucking Teddy, fuck that name. Jack Kilmer, Val Kilmer's kid says it. I hope his name's Jack Kilmer. I don't care, the fucking kid who's not as interesting as Fred says it. And
I still like
what
Teddy.
well, what makes Teddy sincere, right?
April knows that Teddy is sincere when he says that he loves. Well, on one hand, it kind of just
But why
comes
does she
out.
know? Like, why does she know?
I
Like,
think, I
compare
think,
it
I
compare
think,
it to Franco.
I think largely because it's in contrast to Franco, because it's in contrast
Yeah,
to those power dynamics, and it's
asking you to
understanding like,
elaborate on this.
oh, this. Like, I think that she knows because it's like somebody that's her age, and she actually understands kids her age more than she does adults. More than, and it's almost like it's a natural kind of like it's natural like conveying of information rather than kind of like subtle like in gradual manipulation. Even if Franco is not necessarily meaning harm, he's still inflicting harm. This kid
Well,
is just like I just love you,
I
right?
think Franco's predatory because I get predatory like
Oh
sexual
no, he's predatory.
feelings from
I
like
think
yeah, I think Franco's
I just don't know if he sees it
wait,
that
let me know.
way.
And for the benefit of Mr. Franco, I'm going to refer to him as Mr. B when I call him deeply predatory. Mr. B is deeply predatory, I feel, as are most of the adults here. Teddy has that scene with Fred's dad, right? And Fred's dad is like coming on to him in a pretty heavy and direct sort of way, and I
Oh,
think it
that
works
was
too.
direct. He was definitely hitting on
I
them.
think it was
Like,
as direct
oh,
as Mr. B was in a
I like your
different way.
earring. I like your hair. You know, and then
Yeah.
it's like, but also like the fact that he's high, kind of like sort of like rationalize it, like, oh, I'm just high, like, but it's like, no, he's like exploiting kind of the idea that he's high and to kind of um hit on this kid, his own son's friend.
Yeah,
Um,
I think we'll move on to Teddy now. We can
okay.
obviously go back if you think of something about April. Go back to April. Mia, start us off on Teddy. What do you like about Teddy?
Well, going back to him confessing his love for April, what I think about that is that I think that he wouldn't say it if it wasn't true, and she knows that because they're both the same age, and they're not just gonna like say things if they're not believable, and because they're friends and they already know each other so well. Um, so I really like him. I kind of wish there was more to like his past maybe,
Right.
or like who he really is. But
I don't know how he simultaneously has like the most interiority, but I have the least attachment to Teddy. I mean, I
I
couldn't
like
imagine the
Teddy.
film without him. But okay, why do you like Teddy? I find him
Well,
fucking
well, well,
boring.
well, I feel like all of these characters kind of like exist like in conjunction with each other. So for him, it's almost like
He
you
has
get
the rotten luck of standing next to Nat Wolff at his craziest. Like he has that rotten luck.
yes, but almost like you get more. You come to understand like sort of April and also Nat Wolf's or Fred
I feel
more
like Emma
through
Roberts holds
Teddy.
her own. Like Emma Roberts is very engaging
What
on
what
screen.
what,
This is like
what,
Jack Kilmer's first film, and like I don't know, there's not a whole lot to that character for
Well,
me.
Teddy's trying. Teddy, no, I disagree. I think Teddy's trying to find himself. And in a lot of ways, as Mia said, like it reminds me of Paranoid Park. Like I think Teddy is trying to find himself, and in a way, but he's trying to like navigate. It's like he has friends, but but Fred, specifically, really sort of like brings him down. Like towards the beginning, they hit like he like scares like he scares him
Fred's
by
the
like hitting
fucking
against like the
hero of
wall.
this movie.
I mean, his friend is a psychopath, but then also like he has some somewhat like kind of like really like angsty, anti-system kind of like anger that's kind of like building up inside of him. But then also he's at the same time, especially when he is trying to reform himself in a way. I think he is trying to do better, but then he's constantly brought back, and this is kind of what I think like Gia Coppola was also saying like he's constantly being brought back into like this world that kind of like that he doesn't exactly want to be part of, but he has friends in it, so he has some kind of so it's sort of like this back and forth like internally, and then but I think above all else he doesn't. I think he would ditch Fred just like that if it meant being with April. I think like what he really wants to do with April, but since he doesn't have her at the at least at the in the beginning, like he kind of like
What do you think
things.
compels Teddy to confess that he loves her at that moment?
I think a big part of it is just that he just felt like it was the right moment, but also I think like he didn't even necessarily mean to say that. He just kind of just said it, and he's like, you know what? Yeah, part of it's also intoxication, I do believe. Um, but yeah, but I think it was a sincere moment, but also like he's kind of, I feel like he might actually have some of the, he has a lot of like he evolves as a character as it goes on, and I think like he is compelled to talk to and to tell confess his love because he's sort of grown to the point where he's like, well, I want to be my own individual person, right? And I feel like a big, actually, you know what, I think a big part of this movie is trying to find your kind of your own like individual self, like in conjunction with everybody else. That's what I think a
Yeah.
big part of it is, and we'll get to that way more with Nat Wolff's
All of this
character.
is best expressed with Fred, okay? Maybe that's like the only problem of this movie is that like one character gets every message across while the
Well,
other
no,
two
but no,
get a
but I
lot
don't.
of them, but not enough.
I agree, but I don't think Fred would be as compelling without the other characters in conjunction with him, like kind of like in
No, and I have no
contrast.
problem with April. It's just or any problem with Jack Kilmer as an actor. It's just
No, I love Teddy. Teddy's great, but Fred is definitely the best, and April's pretty great too. Another point I actually do want to talk about April though is like kind of like back to like what I was saying about Teddy defining like his individual self. I think that's a big part of um April as well, where like she is constantly comparing herself to other people, especially when he realizes that Coach B is sort of like somewhat touchy maybe with some of the other soccer
oh right.
players, and she really kind of lashed out. She's like, oh, she's not that pretty, she's like not even necessarily in denial, but just trying to rationalize it, like, oh, he wouldn't be with her, or would he? And but because she wants to be special, right? Because she wants to be special to him. But then at the end of the day, like, no, they aren't good for each other, like based off of those power dynamics. Like you know, it's weird at best, and it's predatory at worst, and manipulative, right? Like
Yeah.
but I think like she kind of evolved as her own person also, because she like experiences kind of like being like abused in some ways, at least emotionally abused. I am not entirely sure if James Franco's character sees himself as a predator or not, though. But at any rate, like
And
she
probably so.
but at any rate, kind of like the because when he like apologizes to her, I do think that the character is supposed to be sincere about that. It's just that like she's like, this is either too overwhelming, and also like it's like I just feel like kind of like used in a way, and because that's ultimately what he's doing. And but
I feel
then
like
when
she's using him too to get rid of her innocence.
nah, I don't see
Well,
that.
I don't think she likes Mr. B much.
I don't. Well, so okay, so actually, yes and no. I wouldn't go so far as to say that she's trying to use him. I think it's more like she's I think it's more like she does take it as an kind of opportunity based, but at the same time, to like remove her innocence. But at the same time, I think she's also um feels like he is I think she does fall for him. I really do. I think,
Mia,
or
Mia,
at the
Mia, what do you think?
Yeah.
or at the very least, she falls for the idea of him. Where you know what I mean? And
Okay.
that's how I maybe see it, like sociologically. Like she
I
falls
can
for the idea.
feel when I'm gonna start to say problematic things, and I can exit the discourse and say, Mia, come in with your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I don't know if it's so much about like her feelings for him. Like I don't feel that way at all when I'm watching it. I really think it's more about yeah, her losing her innocence, and even the way that it's filmed, like while it's happening, like all the close-up shots on her, like you don't see him at all. And then when they're at the party later and her friends are talking to those group of guys and they're like, "Oh, like isn't she so sweet and she's a virgin?" So she's probably
Well,
like
okay,
really fed up of being called that too.
okay. Let me tell you
No,
why.
no, hold on,
Let me
hold
tell.
on. I thought to say,
Yeah. Okay.
Mia,
That's
if you ever want to agree with me, just jump right in and agree
right.
with me against Justin.
I have some like not necessarily disagreements, but maybe just like slightly deviated like interpretations of that. Well, I do agree that she's wanting to find a solution to like lose her virginity and uh basically kind of like find her more individual self, as I was mentioning earlier. And she uses kind of like people as like means to get there. But at the same time, as far as the sex scene goes, I think the reason why you don't show James Franco's character, or Mr. B, in like up close is because it shouldn't be about him, because I don't think, because I feel like the idea is it's more about like how does she feel in the situation, like as far as the director, Gia is trying to frame the subject, like if he is predatory, why should it be an equal thing? No, it should just be about how does she feel in the situation. That's the way I see it.
It might not be as predatory as you're saying. The act is probably more important than the person. Like the actual act of losing your virginity here, I think, is what's in focus, not being preyed upon. I think that's what Mia's saying too.
And I don't entirely disagree with that, actually. I do think that she does use Mr. B for that, but I think ultimately, like her, like really kind of like
And we already know
decline.
what his face looks like because the girls were like, I bet he goes like this when he comes in the first scene. We already know what James Franco's gonna look like.
Yeah.
That's a joke. That's a joke.
No. I think there actually may be some truth to that, because I kind of get the feeling that a lot of the girls may have like slept with them. So I think
that's actually like a really funny scene because Mr. B interrupts them and they're like, yeah, he interrupted us, because they're like, hey, that's my face. Hey, they're doing my face. That's funny. That's some funny shit.
But at the same time, I think I think the idea there is like I think she does develop feelings for him, because I feel like her decline, like where she just starts feeling terrible, by like how he's like treating the other girls and not her, and kind of like I think part of that really is like a genuine falling for him in some ways. Or at the very least the idea of him, and that's how I kind of view a lot of texts, and like and how they treat like relationships, where it's like like, and even in real life I think a lot of people don't necessarily fall for the person, but more like what they represent to them, and especially like sociologically. But when you're a kid, right, when you're a teenager, that's fine because you're really trying to make sense of the world. But as far
But
as I'm concerned,
I don't think it's falling for Mr. B. I think it's being disillusioned by the act of like having sex. Like it's
well,
meaningless.
it's both, but it's not just that though. But like I
Like
think
she was pissed off when she heard that Teddy got a blowjob. And like, but now like these acts don't have like value or meaning in this world.
well, they do in the sense of it's sociologically determined that they do. But they're ultimately like arbitrary. I mean, I don't even necessarily really just agree with what you're saying. I just think there's a bit more to it than that, if that makes sense. Um, because I feel like because it could have gone down the route that like a movie like 13 did, where basically like the girls would just have sex with somebody, then just drop them because they don't care about the person. I think that she actually does develop a care, or at least like she wants to have that kind of like secret, like taboo, scandalous relationship, because of what it represents, if that makes sense, at the very least. So.
I mean, we get a wonderful deconstruction of what's the word? Emily as a character, um, being a lot more sexually active. We get like a cool deconstruction of that archetype in here, and the moments where it's filming Emily in the backyard, that's when it reminded me so much of Sofia Coppola, like the Virgin Suicides, like the slow mo of her on like a tire swing and shit. The blonde hair helps too.
Yeah, and
Um,
where he's like idealizing her, just like
yeah,
just like the kids were in Virtual Suicides. Yep, absolutely.
absolutely. Mia,
Yeah, and the way he says like "Tell me you love me," like as she's giving him a blowjob.
oh my lord. Okay, do we want to go to the person we've all been waiting for? Do we have anything? We can go back to Teddy, the boring ass Teddy, and interesting.
Teddy is great. Teddy is great. Okay. I'll say one thing about Teddy though. I think that like I do think that he's trying to do good, and I think there's a lot to I think he's a necessary component of the story, honestly,
No, he
and his
absolutely
placement
is.
in it.
He's absolutely interesting.
But I do agree that he's kind of like exists sort of as a bit more of a maybe in some ways an audience proxy more than the other
I
two.
think so too. And you know what Teddy's major problem is? He wants to be king. He wants to be pharaoh, but you can't be a fucking king and he can't be a fucking pharaoh. And Fred knows this because Fred is based. Fred is awesome. Let's talk about Fred. Let's talk about get in the fucking pool. Let's talk about the best part of this movie, Fred. Every scene that Fred is in. Nat Wolff, what the fuck? And also another Nickelodeon star, another because Emma Roberts is on Unfabulous, and this guy's in the Naked Brothers band, plays like 4 instruments in this movie. Nat Wolff, what the fuck?
Okay,
amazing.
let me tell you something about this. And ever since have you seen Fault in Our Stars, Mia?
Yeah, he is in that, huh?
He's in it, but he's like that's not a very good movie in my opinion. And Ansel Elgort I do not like, but he plays as the blind kid, the friend, and he's so good in it. He should have been the guy that she fell for, not Ansel Elgort. But anyways, like Nat Wolff, he's great, but he's untapped. But I feel like he's just misused all the time. Death Note, terrible. Fallen Star is not a good movie either, in my opinion. Paper Towns, what on earth? But like, I knew when I saw Fallen Stars, like, oh, this kid, he can be in something great. I know he can. I'm glad that Palo Alto exists because I'm like, yes, this is the movie. But I hope that he does something else because he has a lot of potential. But maybe part of the appeal is that he still is like he's probably like what 17 or 18 in this movie. Like part of it is that he's like kind of is part of the appeal, but he's like because he is not just a kid, he is a psychopath. And not just a psychopath, but he really represents like that angst, that anger, that and not just that, but also the trauma. that comes from childhood, that comes from high school. Um, he's great.
Mia, what do you like about Fred?
I like that I don't know, he reminds me of people that I went to high school with, but even more like extreme, like even more like notable, you know? He's
Something,
just like
right.
unforgettable.
Well, yeah, no, I agree, and I do find it interesting because James Franco was saying on the Vice documentary that most of the characters are based off of real people, or like composites of different like mixtures of people, except for Fred. He said that Fred is kind of more like sort of like this inner darkness that he found kind of within himself and within like some
He's
of his
basically
peers.
like Teddy's like shadow archetype, man. Like he's basically oh my god, he's an incredible character, but I think he gets all of the central points of this film out in the not only like with the most clarity, but with the most like power, with the most like emotional
Resonance.
punch and weight. He
Yeah.
does get to be the loudest too and like scream his fucking head off. But I don't even know where I'd like to start with Fred. I'd actually like to start at the end of Fred. I want to talk about the end of the movie. Um,
Get in the pool.
okay, we can start.
Get in the
Like that's
fucking
okay.
pool.
That's when the movie goes like Justin and I talked about like how we felt near the end of this movie too. Like someone like could and should die in this
Yeah,
movie.
that's the thing.
It was
Like
I thought Fred was like I mean Fred is probably still dead at the end of the movie, but I thought he was surely gonna get killed or
from
like
the
hurt
well,
somehow.
even earlier on with the chainsaw, I any like at different points in the movie, I thought, is somebody gonna get like raped? Or I mean, arguably April did, but like, is somebody gonna get raped or like murdered at any point? I wouldn't know. You know, when it came to the pool, the scene with the pool, I thought I would not be surprised if he would kill her or she would kill him.
That
You
gets
know,
the biggest laugh of the movie from me when Emily breaks the fucking wine bottle or whatever over his head. It's amazing. It's great timing. It's very funny.
it's like, do it to me. Like, I dare you.
It also gets a huge laugh because I don't know if he's about to assault her or not because he's just so unpredictable. I have no idea. And he gets even more unpredictable as the movie progresses to its end point, like pulling out a knife. Like, I think he's going to stab Teddy. I think he's going to kill the drug dealer. But no, he breaks down crying about
Or
wanting to
kill
be in a world
himself.
full of dicks
Like,
saying that he sucks.
yeah, it's so
Justin,
good.
you want to break into his breakdown with the drug dealer?
One of my you want to do it, Mia?
Sorry, I had something I wanted to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
The way I've always seen it, I've never, when I first watched it, I didn't think that someone was gonna die. I didn't think about it like that. I thought it was maybe gonna be, yeah, more to do with their trauma and someone like finally breaking down, which Fred does. But I see the part as like when Teddy goes over to his house to look for Fred and he's with his dad on the couch. I see that as kind of like showing us that probably Fred acts out because his dad probably,
Molest him.
yeah. So
Well, yeah. I was hoping we'd get into that. I completely agree with you on that. See, I can agree too. I think like that's kind of like part of the yeah. Once again, Teddy is used as a way to like demonstrate things about other characters, like but not,
Fucking yawn.
but like I would say that that scene does indicate that, hey, there might be something going on with you know Fred and his dad. And you know, Teddy kind of joking like, I think your dad was coming on to me. He's like, shut up, man. My dad's not gay. Like, just like that. But then it's also like you see the decline and where it goes when he's in that scene with the drug dealer. He's like, kind of okay. Actually, earlier on, even in the library,
Yeah,
like
I wanted you to bring that up. Yeah.
I'll get to the drug. I'll get to the drug deal part too. But in the library, like he like kind of he like interrupts. Like Teddy's now trying to be a good person, and he's just like, he's like, hey, what's up? Like what are you like? You looking at these books? That's gay. oh, this is gay. This is gay. This is
All they do is like hang out with each other all the time. It's like two dudes just hanging out. That's literally what we do.
It's literally what we do. It was great, but he like didn't really object to that because I feel like part of it's like, and also like what Teddy is interesting. Teddy is very more secure about his own sexuality. I feel like because it's like, in the way that, but Fred is really not, because Fred is like, oh, that's gay, just and using every homophobic like, you know, word in the book. And he's like, basically like, he says like, oh, that's gay, and Teddy's like, so like whatever, it doesn't really matter, like whatever, like I don't see why it should matter, and he's like, oh, but don't you get it? You're gay, and this is gay, and then he's like, look what they do. And it's like, this is just gay, and he's like, that's literally what we do, and he didn't really object to it. But Freddie's like really insecure, I feel like, about it, and like I feel like part of like that's part of the whole like hyper masculine journey that he goes on when he has sex with his with the one girl, and like it gets blown by her. It's like after sex he just wants to leave, and it's not so much, I think part of it's like he needs sex, or he wants to like kind of compensate for whatever is going on in his own life by like seeking like heterosexual relationships, or like or heterosexual sex, right? But at the same time it's like he has like, I feel like, if he doesn't have homosexual desires, he does have like a lot of like trauma that's brought on probably by his father, that is like sexual, and once again it's the abuse of like parental power. So when it comes to when it comes to the drug scene, I feel like you can make a good parallel between that drug deal scene and the scene when he's getting blown, and he tells her to tell him that she loves him. But because he says to Skull, the drug dealer, what difference does it really make, whether a guy is like sucking you off, or a girl is, because either way, like you're really kind of giving yourself to the girl. Like the girl's the one that's in control. Right, because like she's the one that had, she's the one that has like your dick in her mouth, and basically it's like, but hey, that happened earlier, right? He likes getting head, right? And if he kind of, and but then he's also like, hey, you're like, he like really pushed his Skull for like no reason at all. He just provokes him, and he's like, would you rather be a girl or a gay guy? And it's like
Saying all this with
neither.
like a butcher knife in his hand.
Yeah, all this with a butcher knife in his hand, and then he just kind of, and it's like, so there's like a threat of violence, and there's also a threat of like homosexuality, in a very like kind of, it threatens kind of like the normal. By normal I mean like kind of like the heteronormative um idea of masculinity, but he's also like, what does it matter? And I think that Ted, I don't think, of course they do use like kind of like homophobic language, but I don't think Ted is really like homophobic in the sense of where he actually like hates like gay people or anything, but I
I mean,
think that,
I'm not sure if Fred has an ideology. He's fascinating.
well, yeah, that's why I find it interesting. But because I think Fred is like all over the place, kind of inside, because he's dealing with like trauma in his life, and but he tries to make up for it by being like this complete jerk to everybody that's
Oh,
kind of like in
okay.
his way, and it really kind of like
Earlier, yeah.
impacts Teddy, because he's like, I need to get out of this, right? Like I don't want to be around him when he's like this. And but Fred tells it
Yeah.
in response, I don't want to be around you when you're like this.
And
Um,
earlier you were talking about like these kids just trying to find individuality, or at least themselves, in a world that seems to reject that as a concept. And I mean, and he plays these little games of like trying to imagine himself in a different period or in like a different fantasy world, but he can't imagine himself as having any sort of value. I mean, he would think that the idea of being a king or a pharaoh is absurd, and that you
I,
must view yourself
well,
just one second, must view yourself a little negatively. But even him when he went to go paint with like Teddy or whatever, and he was being called Bob, and he's like, I'm not Bob, I don't know who you're talking about. And like Teddy's like, I don't know, just go with it. I'm like, I'm not Bob. And of course that's what he's saying as he's driving like head first into oncoming traffic on the interstate. He's not Bob over and over again, but he's also not Fred. He's not anyone.
I think that's kind of like part of the idea there, but he's also trying to reach kind of like some kind of like sense of like catharsis.
Well, yeah, I
like
wasn't
this,
criticizing it. I was saying that's
right. But he's trying to find some kind of like catharsis, kind of like the rainbow on the other side, because like because I watched that scene over again. The art teacher said something about how like the art teacher was in that position too, and he was like, "I'm not Bob," but it's like, what exactly does that mean? Or is that James Franco just being a little pretentious? But maybe a bit of both. But I think in any way, it's kind of like the lack of individuality, where we're just mistaken for other people. We are like, I don't want to be that guy. That's kind of how I see it. I want to be my own person. But it's interesting. But the thing is, the difference between Fred and Teddy is really summed up at the very end, because he goes into oncoming traffic because he wants to bring other people down with him. He said if he were ever to kill himself, he would try to kill other people too. That's school shooter mentality. And likewise, Teddy goes the other way and on his own. So you really do get this juxtaposition of the way that they kind of think. And I find that very, very interesting.
Yeah, Mia, I feel like Justin and I can go back and forth about how we both love Fred for different reasons. I want to know, Mia, weigh in on this. What do you think of the ending?
I love the ending. I thought it was really unexpected, but at the same time when it happened, I was like, oh, it makes perfect sense. And I always love like showing people the movie and seeing how they react to the end. Some people are just like, oh, whatever, and they don't say anything, and others are like, wow, like that was amazing.
Yeah, I texted Zach and I was like, I'll text Zach, this movie is great. But I said that before the ending actually came up. And so I didn't even know what the last 15, I didn't even know what the last 15 minutes was going to be like. Oh, okay, well, this is even better than I thought it was going to be. No, I think I really like the movie, and I really like the ending too. And I think it really says a lot about like the different characters, and then also what those characters represent in like society. Because as far as I'm concerned, I don't really care what the movie says about characters if it doesn't say something beyond that, like about like people, which I think that it really does though.
If you get a predatory sense from Mr. B, then what do you get from Fred and Emily?
I think that's definitely like kind of. No, I want necessarily. Well, predatory probably like towards the end of the film, but like when it starts off, I think it's more kind of like she wants like the aggressive kind of like bad boy type, but then like she gets sick of it pretty fast.
Mia, what do you think of Fred and Emily?
I think it's kind of like awkward, and it's supposed to be, especially just the way that he leaves after every time and doesn't really care to like talk to her.
Teddy does the same thing. I think everybody does the same.
But I think no, I think part of it is like he I feel like he also fears intimacy is what it is, like something beyond that. But like he wants power. You don't think he fears intimacy?
Intimacy is so bad.
I think he wants intimacy, but I think it's like kind of like hetero or sorry, like homoerotic like intimacy. But then I'm not sure.
Emily's actually scared of intimacy. She's always talking about never been in love and has a fucking blog. But dude, I don't know. There's something about Emily that makes me think like. Even before Fred is acting like a complete psychopath at the pool, she's like not really wanting to even be around him.
Well, you mean like during the party? Yeah, but she acts up because before that she was like really kind of like passively into it. I feel like, but into it, but not like, but it's not real like intimacy. I do think that Fred may want like intimacy, but I think ultimately Fred is like he does fear it at the same time, but he wants it too. That's kind of how I see it.
There's a little cliche to him, the uncontrollable character who just wants to be in control.
But that's good. But he wants control. He wants power, and he gets that through sex. But that's why he's like get into the pool, because he's like he wants that power, and he's like and he thinks, but it's like but then he spirals downward the less power he has, and he's like he gets like hit in the head by that. The bottle, and it's like, oh, he just becomes like more reveals kind of this more like sensitive side of him, but it's also kind of really deeply troubled. But then it's also like, what is it that he wants? Is he trying to just like, and I don't, we don't even know for sure if he actually even is like molested by his dad, and that's something that I find fascinating about it. But you can really you can like infer that, but then it's like maybe like he's trying to rationalize everything that's going on in his life, kind of like with that in mind. Um, I don't know. What do you think, Mia?
I think the way Emily reacts makes sense, and that he's kind of like finally getting what he deserves for being so shitty throughout the whole
Yeah.
movie, and then just bringing all these guys in to have sex with her when they were supposed to have like a relationship, and he just destroyed it.
Right. I feel like everybody in this movie, in some way, is kind of manipulative and is not necessarily the best person in varying ways. Yeah, I love April, don't get me wrong, but like there is definitely some level of selfishness that you two were identifying that I agree with. But but it's just kind of I feel like all these characters really do make for like fascinating case studies. But even though at the same time I think that the film was really detached from them, like in some ways, like because I feel like we're supposed to. I feel like there is a lot of like unreliable narration going on in terms of like kind of like their own like we shouldn't trust these characters as being kind of like as like moral figures like any of them, and then also like and they don't really
I
know
feel like
what they want.
it's as in yeah. I think it's the composition. I feel like Gia's as invested in the kids as she could truthfully be. I think the viewer
Right.
should be a bit detached because that's obviously the themes of the film. We're as close as we ever could be. I mean, the whole thing is like I want to see closer, and that's kind of the beautiful part. That I want to know Fred more,
And we get I feel like
but
we
it's
do.
probably impossible to if that's unchangeable.
Well, I feel like he doesn't really even know himself, but I feel like with like April and Teddy there at least is some level of like kind of like thematic closure as far
I
as
don't think
they're
they know themselves either.
no,
I
no, no,
mean,
no, 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 no. They don't. But I feel like they're
April
coming.
doesn't know
There's
like what kind of school she wants to go to, anything.
no, 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 no. I completely agree with that. But I feel like there's like between specifically as a relationship, there's at least a hint of like, hey, maybe we'll come to maybe in the close future we'll come to understand ourselves better through each other. And that's kind of what I liked about their little like dynamic going on, even though it is kind of minimal, but I feel like there's still something there. But like when she texts him, when she like you can't help but smile a little bit because you do like these characters to some extent. At least I do.
Yeah,
Freddie, on the other hand, he's my favorite character.
but I guess that like that every sentimental moment comes with like a nihilistic cost in this film. I mean, she texts Teddy, and then the next thing we see is like Fred, an oblivion, trying
Absolutely.
to like kill himself,
Well, yeah.
staging murder. Like there's a nihilistic cost to sentimentality that this film I think is really
Absolutely,
really good at.
absolutely, and that's what I love about it because everything exists within conscious of something else. We may be able to find happiness, but in the peripheral, there's people that are suffering. That's the idea. That's the idea there, right? That's how I see it.
Mm,
Um,
yeah,
and yeah,
Yeah, what's interesting too again is that Fred isn't in the book, and also in the book they're short stories, so the characters don't really interact with each other. Like they just have their
yeah,
own
that's kind of how I was thinking. It
stories
was
going on. So it's funny how they put it all together.
that's interesting. But
awesome. Yeah,
I
it
do.
reminds me of like
What
you go,
reminds It reminds you of what?
you go. Yeah,
Okay, I was gonna say like
nothing.
Fred. Fred, it's interesting that you say that Fred isn't in the book. I haven't read the book, but it's interesting that he's not in it because I do know that James Franco has some level of like kind of like influence on the conceptualization of him because he said that it's kind of like represents kind of like this inner darkness within himself. And I think that it really comes across in the film too. He's like really, and I feel like even like it or not, we talked about how like it may be like the film may be like sort of like problematic in some respects, at least like retrospectively, or retroactively. But the thing is, I feel like also part of this is like Franco wrestling with his own demons, in some ways of like his own like taboo desires. And I mean, he plays the coach, and I think like but at the same time, like it's very critical of Coach B. It's not endorsing that kind of relationship. It shows kind of like the issues that come with it. And then also like if Fred is meant to be kind of like an extension of James Franco in some way, like that's that kid's a psychopath, you know, and I think like, but it's also like it's a psychopath. But the thing is, you know, people that are psychopathic, people that are like people that are abusive, even like they like a lot of times like it or not, they still are people though, and they're people that are hurt inside, and but maybe we shouldn't sympathize with them because of what they have done in life, but at the end of the day, like they still are people, and that's sort of kind of like the frightening truth of it, you know.
I think, yeah, Fred's the most relatable person in this movie.
The really
Period.
self-destructive quality, yeah, I think it's great, and Nat Wolff kills it too. I need more
Oh,
Nat Wolff
amazing
movies.
performance.
He needs to
Yeah,
play.
I think his brother's in more things than he is now.
Really?
Oh, right.
Yeah, like his brother is the one in Hereditary who like
Oh,
Oh,
nurses
right,
him.
that's
I know that
true.
kid.
Yeah, he's good too. He's good too, actually. He's good too.
Nat Wolff would have done so much better. Imagine Nat Wolff getting to smash his head on a desk.
Oh yeah.
There would have been poetry to it. It would have been a ballet kind of
Well,
performance.
hey, his brother is good though. I mean, I'll say that. Like at least in
Yeah, his brother's
Hereditary.
fine.
And I'm not even. I'm not.
Now
I
that
don't
Mia
even.
opened my eyes,
Yeah, I'm not
I'm just
even
an
like.
imposter from it every time I see him.
Yeah, I think his brother's also going to be in that old movie from Chalamet thing, I think. But like, no, the Naked Brothers band. I want to see them go further with the what a
Good shit.
weird name for a show. But the Naked Brothers, I want to see them go further with like films, you know. And I want, you know, I kind of would like Nat Wolff to almost be kind of like the new like Michael Pitt and being like kind of these like these indie films, but kind of like be, you know, that's how I would like to see him, you know. Um, that's me at least.
We'll just let that hang. No, I agree. I agree. I just don't know why there was silence there. I agree completely. Oh, hey, any other scenes that stand out to either one of you? Music is great in it, by the way.
The cinematographer, yeah, the cinematography is also great. Like Gia Coppola really does like construct a good movie here. The composition of everything, it's
Mm-hmm.
no, I don't really have any complaints really. Like honestly, I don't even
Wonderfully
really,
composed.
you know, honestly beyond kind of like the problematic aspects of it. Like I don't really even have any criticisms of the film, honestly. I know you guys
Well,
don't
it's
like.
wild. It's like
I know
James.
you don't like Teddy as much as I do. Like I don't know what's up with that, but you know, Teddy's cool.
Because I mean, it's like Romeo being your favorite character in Romeo and Juliet. That's boring.
Oh,
But
what do you?
it's wild that like James Franco leaves like what he does now, like his actions now have imprinted this film in a different way. Because if like he hadn't been accused so many times of being predatory, I that would be like the 10th thing I'd think about in this movie. He feels
Right.
so secondary to the point that
Well,
his
yeah, that's
character to
why.
me is almost an afterthought. Like I would think of
Well,
so many
no, I
things
know,
before.
I know, I think that is, I think like his place in the story really is like it's quite important. But like at the end of the day, the thing that I'm thinking about most is not James Franco in the movie. It's Nat Wolff.
That's
Like
right.
it's Nat Wolff
That
absolutely
Wolf is
killing
the
it.
best.
You know, like
An
jeez.
unreal performance, man. Elevated it so much. I can't imagine it anyone else. Amount of energy, amount of catharsis. That's a Mercutio fucking character right there. That's a that's a great performance. That's a Nick Stahl on Disturbing Behavior. Am I right, guys?
He's better.
That's a great
Nat
performance.
Wolff is better. Palo Alto is better than Disturbing Behavior.
No, yeah, no. You know what? If Nat Wolff could do like a bully movie, but not be Michael Pitt, he'd be a great Nick Stahl in it, though. Like I'm with you a little bit on this.
Yeah.
But gosh, Mia, Justin, what kind of feeling does this film leave with you? What does it resonate within you guys?
I first watched it when I was 20, and it really felt like I was just saying goodbye to that part of my life, like hanging out with all my friends, and especially just like those skater kids that I wasn't really like friends with, but I hung around with, and just like going to parties. All the party scenes really reminded me of just like being at parties, especially the sound of it too, like how it sounds like the songs are mixed by like a DJ or something. It gave me a
Hmm.
similar feeling. And I think it makes me miss being that age and not having responsibilities. Um, yeah, I think that's why I put this movie on so much when I'm like with friends or something and we don't know what to watch, or if we've like been drinking and need something to watch to go to sleep. And
Yeah, I feel a great sense of loss too. Like it's capturing something that is so fleeting. I think that's what's great about most coming of age movies is that it's like it's capturing something dynamic that is fleeting, that isn't like that's going to evaporate. This film feels like lightning in a bottle. That's
I
really good.
I
What about you,
I I,
Justin?
I agree. I think like what resonates most with me is actually just kind of like what the three central characters represent within the narrative. Because I think like April is almost like somebody that like is trying to navigate the her world, but has like almost bad things. But she is the one that's kind of like manipulated by other people. That's how I felt. Whereas I felt like with Teddy, he's trying to like um, do good, right? But he's brought down by his friends, and it's like I can relate to those kind of aspects because also like kind of like I want to like advance as a person, but then also it's like I have like obligations to like people in my life, or not necessarily obligation, but just kind of like social, like kind of like internal like obligations, right? And then but then bad things happen to me. I want to do better, but like it's almost like maybe the self destruction is brought on by other people, but maybe it's also myself. And then for Fred, I think like that is kind of like the it's almost like the self-destructive darkness within us all. And
I think you're
I
about
think
to nail it like so much. I think you're about to nail it because you're Teddy's just trying to do good, and what the fuck, like Fred's just trying to do something, just something that feels like it has an impact,
well
and
I
that probably expresses itself in very self-destructive ways. I remember being a teenager. I felt a lot more alive when I was in danger than when I was safe, and especially when I was being deliberately self-destructive, something I definitely still am.
but at the
I
same time, it's like you almost want to at least find some kind of comfort and be you want to. The thing about Teddy is you kind of like toes the lines between what April's doing and what's being done to April, and then also Fred. And I
But I
think
think
like
Fred realizes the truth that there is no comfort, that it's just this, and it's this unchangeable mess. This isn't just.
no, I don't. And that's what Fred realizes. But I think at the same by the same token, you can also say that like, hey, Teddy, um, he kind of finds comfort in the end, at least relative to Fred, at least, where it's like you almost like the part of like kind of like he Freddie descends down into like self destruction because partially because he's complicit in doing so. He's not trying to make himself better. Teddy is, and in some ways I can sort of relate to both those aspects, and then also with with April, she's also just trying to do something. She's trying to be something. She's trying to find her own individuality. All these characters are, but they're not always like pursuing it under the best means. And I think Teddy in some ways is actually kind of a bit more passive and kind of going with the flow. But he's also like, but eventually he kind of wants to, get onto the right path. But it's like at the same time, like he has friends, but it's like and that's
Yeah,
what the
but
high school that's what the teenage experience is. That's what it is like becoming like a young adult is you
it's
have
true
like
too.
people
But
telling you
Gia
different
doesn't add.
things.
Gia doesn't add like a value judgment to that. Like Gia doesn't like presuppose that there is a
Right.
right path or not.
Right, but
Like
you're adding a value judgment on and saying that Fred is like right in the end, and I don't agree with that. I think Teddy equally and April have their. You can argue each one of them is right or wrong, and that's kind of what I think is beautiful about the film. It's detached in that way, like from like applying this the qualitative like moral judgment, right? Right, Mia?
uh, right, Mia.
yeah, I think Sorry.
It's okay. You can agree with me. It's fine. Don't worry
No,
about
no,
it.
no, Mia,
Zach will
no.
still have you on. Like you can agree with me.
I just want to say it's funny that like how Fred gets so much worse because Teddy like suddenly can't hang out with them all the time, and like Freddy goes to visit him at the library, and because he has nothing else to do, otherwise he's just going to be self-destructive.
True. And that's also another thing. I feel like the absence of Teddy actually plunges him more into self-destruction, right? That's how I see it. Because like once he stops hanging out with him, he starts
I
being an even giant, even larger. He's already a psychopath, but like he becomes even more of a psychopath.
I think that self-destruction is like maybe the only honest thing you can do in this landscape. I don't think.
No, no, and
I think
I don't
his
think the film.
ending's
I
a
don't think
lot
the
more
film's just.
sincere.
No, the film's not just
You
saying
know
that
what?
because it's
You
having
can
the juxtaposition of different ideas. You can't like
can
you're no. You're self-destructive and you're trying to like rationalize your own self-destruction through this movie that offers three different looks at the issue.
you're simping for a text. Like you're simping for a stupid text message at the end of this movie when a kid's driving in the traffic. You're like, they're equal.
Yeah, because you know what? Yeah, that's what Gia Coppola is ultimately doing. Yeah, I agree. That's what I'm
I'm
saying.
not sure.
No. Like the idea, like in the part of the brilliance of like montage where you have like one image and then the next and they're contrasting. Like you know what you're doing? You're showing different ideas together in conjunction with one another.
Mia,
Yes,
Mia.
there's issues with
Okay,
both. There's
Justin,
issues with both.
Justin, I'm talking to Mia. Mia. Now, style is substance is usually pretty cool. I don't know why they're simping for fucking Jack Kilmer right now. I don't know why they're doing this. I don't know why they're lying and saying that the answer to life isn't self-destruction. I don't know why they're doing
No, you're just being self-destructive. That's what I'm saying. I'm not criticizing the film. I'm criticizing you now.
it. Listen, maybe Fred was right. Okay, that's all I'm saying.
He's right in some aspects, but it's still more. But he's not really.
Justin,
He's
listen, you
not.
can't be a fucking pharaoh. How many times I gotta tell you, you can't be a king? I'm gonna drive this car into a wall. Perfect response. Okay, Mia, bring us back to reality here.
Um, I don't know what else to say.
All right, we have any closing thoughts on Palo Alto? I think Justin already gave theirs.
Great movie. We can all agree on that, right?
Hey,
And
we
Fred
should
is
all
the
thank
best.
Mia.
Fred is still the best, though. Like narratively speaking, not
And
necessarily.
philosophically speaking, too.
No,
Yeah.
you even say he doesn't have. You even say he doesn't have a real philosophy.
You shouldn't have a real philosophy, probably. He's
Maybe
not wrong.
I might agree with that actually. But all right, Mia, closing thoughts.
I don't know. I've just seen this so many times. I have it like ingrained in my brain.
Oh, that's totally fine. Like, and I think that's kind of like, you know, Zach and I just watched this the other day, and we both love it. But
Also watched it because of you, Mia. So thank you for having everyone watch this movie.
yeah, thank you, Mia.
And I think that's about it. Thanks for watching Your Cult Boyfriend. Thank you, Mia. Thank you, Mia, for being on this show with me.